He thought I was the perfect, unsuspecting wife, blind to his carefully crafted lies. He had no idea I was already plotting how to quietly burn his world to the ground. It started with the little things, didn't it? It always does. You read about it online, you see it in movies, you hear your friends whisper about their friend's cousin, but you never, ever think it will be you. You never think your life, the one you built with such care, brick by perfect brick, will be the one with a hairline crack running through its foundation. For me, the first crack was the smell of lavender. Mark hated lavender. He said it smelled like old ladies in funeral homes. Yet, for a week straight, he came home from his late nights at the office smelling faintly of it. When I asked, he'd just laugh it off. Must be Janet's new air freshener in accounting. It's driving us all nuts. Mark was the perfect husband, the kind you brag about without even realizing you're bragging. He made me coffee every morning, exactly how I liked it. A splash of cream, no sugar. He'd leave little notes on the bathroom mirror, silly doodles of us as stick figures with a heart between them. He was a partner in the truest sense. We were a team. We were saving up for a huge kitchen renovation, our big 5-year anniversary project. We had blueprints spread across the dining table for months, dreaming together about a farmhouse sink and a marble island where our future kids would one day do their homework. We were solid, unshakable. Or so I thought. The lavender was followed by other cracks. His phone, which used to be communal property, suddenly had a new complex passcode and was permanently attached to his hand. "Work emails, babe," he'd say, flashing me an apologetic smile. "New company policy, super sensitive client data." The late nights became more frequent, the excuses more elaborate. A merger, a deadline, a huge project that required all hands on deck. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly that I practically forced the excuses down my own throat, ignoring the bitter taste they left behind. I became a cheerleader for his career, bringing him dinner at the office, offering to help with spreadsheets, anything to prove to myself that this was real, that my husband was just working hard for our future. But every time I'd offer, he'd have a reason why I couldn't come up. "The office is a madhouse. You'd hate it." Or, "We're all just ordering pizza. Don't trouble yourself." The breaking point wasn't some grand, dramatic discovery. It was quiet. It was a Tuesday. He was in the shower and his phone, lying face down on the nightstand, buzzed. It was a single notification from our shared phone plan. I never checked it. Why would I? But that night, a cold, sharp instinct I didn't know I possessed took over. My hands were shaking as I opened the email. It was the monthly usage report, and there it was, in black and white. Dozens of calls and hundreds of texts to a number I didn't recognize. Not just during the day, but late at night, 11 p.m., midnight, 2 a.m., all while he was supposedly buried in paperwork at the office. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream or cry. Something inside me just switched off. The warm, loving wife was gone, and in her place was a cold, methodical detective. The next morning, before he woke up, I logged into our family account on my laptop, the one we used for the Find My Phone feature. We'd set it up years ago after he lost his phone at a concert. It was for emergencies. And this, I decided, was an emergency of the highest order. For the next 2 days, I watched his little blue dot on the map. It went to his office, just like he said. It went to the gym. It went to the grocery store. I started to feel a sliver of hope, a wave of guilt for my suspicion. Maybe the number belonged to a new colleague. Maybe there was a rational explanation. Then came Friday. He kissed me goodbye, his lips feeling foreign against mine. "Gonna be a late one, babe. We're trying to close this deal before the weekend. Don't wait up." I watched him pull out of the driveway in his prized silver BMW, the car I'd helped him buy, the one we took on our first road trip together. I waited an hour, my heart hammering against my ribs, and then I opened my laptop. The blue dot was moving, but it wasn't heading towards his downtown office building. It was going in the opposite direction, towards the industrial outskirts of town, an area of warehouses and cheap motels we never had any reason to go to. I watched the dot stop and settle over a small building on the side of a forgotten highway. I zoomed in, the Starlight Inn. The name was a cruel joke. It was a place where stars went to die. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. The moment of truth. I could stay home. I could pretend I never saw it. I could let the crack in our foundation splinter and spread until the whole house came down. Or I could go see it for myself. I don't remember the drive. It was like my body was on autopilot while my mind raced through 1,000 different scenarios. I imagined bursting into the room, a scene of fury and tears. I imagined keying his car. I imagined just turning around and driving away. When I got there, I parked across the street, my engine off, hidden behind a large delivery truck. The Starlight Inn was even grimmer in person. The paint was peeling and the neon sign flickered erratically, casting a sad pinkish glow on the parking lot. And there it was, parked right in front of room number 13, his silver BMW, his pride and joy. It was so clean it almost shimmered under the dying motel sign, completely out of place in the grimy lot. Seeing it was like a physical blow. All the air left my lungs. The vague suspicions, the data reports, the little blue dot on the map, it was all abstract until that moment. But his car, our car, was undeniably, physically real. It was proof. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, just staring. I didn't cry. The time for tears was over. I thought about going to the door, about hammering on it until he answered, about seeing the look on his face, about meeting the woman who smelled like lavender. But what would that accomplish? A screaming match in a filthy parking lot? Giving him the chance to lie, to twist it, to somehow make it my fault? No. He didn't deserve that satisfaction. He didn't deserve a reaction. He deserved a consequence. A cold, clear idea bloomed in my mind. It was petty. It was ruthless. It was perfect. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady and sure. I Googled 24-hour towing service near me and dialed the first number that came up. A gruff voice answered, "City Towing. You call, we haul." "Hello?" I said, my voice eerily calm. "I need a car towed." I gave him the address of the Starlight Inn. "Make and model?" "A silver BMW 5 Series," I said, reading the license plate I knew by heart. "It's parked in front of room 13. "And your relation to the vehicle?" the man asked. I took a deep breath. "It's my car. Well, it's in both my husband's name and mine, and I believe it's been stolen and abandoned here." I hung up and watched. 15 minutes later, a massive tow truck rumbled into the lot. I watched as the driver expertly hooked up Mark's beautiful, perfect car. I watched as it was lifted, its front wheels dangling pathetically in the air, and slowly dragged out of the parking lot and into the night. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sadness. I felt a strange, hollow sense of power. I put my car in drive and pulled away, not even glancing back at the empty space in front of room 13. I was halfway home, the silence in my car a deafening roar, when my phone screen lit up the darkness. It buzzed once, twice. The name on the screen made my blood run cold. It was Mark. My hand was frozen over the screen. His name, Mark, glowed in the dark car, a beacon of his own impending doom. To answer, or not to answer. If I ignored it, he'd know something was wrong. My whole wifely persona was built on being available, on being the one he could always count on. Ignoring his call in a supposed emergency would be the first red flag. I couldn't afford that. Not yet. I tapped the green icon and put the phone to my ear, forcing my voice to sound sleepy and soft. "Hey, honey, is everything okay? I must have dozed off." "Babe, oh my God, you're not going to believe this." His voice was a frantic, panicked squeak. It was the voice he used when the basement flooded, the voice of pure chaos. It was almost believable. My car, it's gone, stolen. I came out of the office and it's just gone. The office. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. A cold fury, sharp and precise, sliced through me. I injected a note of alarm into my voice. What, stolen? From the company garage? No way, are you sure you didn't just park on a different level? No, I'm sure. I've looked everywhere. I'm standing in the spot right now and it's empty. Someone stole my car, baby. My BMW. The way he said, my BMW, like it was a cherished child, made me want to laugh. Okay, deep breaths, honey. Don't panic. Did you call the police? I asked, turning onto our quiet tree-lined street. The picture of domestic tranquility. I'm on hold with them now. It's taking forever. This is a nightmare. A complete nightmare. I don't know how I'm going to get home. I can come get you, I offered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I can be there in 20 minutes. No, don't do that. It's so late. The police will be here soon. Probably. Just stay there. I'll grab an Uber once I'm done filing the report. God, this is unbelievable. Okay, Mark, whatever you need. Just get home safe. I hung up and pulled into our driveway. The house was dark except for the porch light I always left on for him. Our home. The home he had left tonight to go lie in a cheap motel bed with a woman who smelled like lavender. I walked inside and methodically began to set the stage. I turned on the TV to a late-night talk show, letting the canned laughter fill the silence. I poured 2 glasses of wine, placing his on the coaster next to his armchair. I put on a pot of coffee, because that's what a concerned wife does when her husband has had a terrible, stressful night. I was creating a tableau of normalcy, a safe harbor for him to sail his ship of lies right into. An hour later, the headlights of an Uber swept across the living room window. I met him at the door, my face a carefully constructed mask of concern. He looked awful. His hair was messy, his tie was loosened, and his eyes were wide with a mixture of genuine stress and theatrical despair. And then I smelled it. Faintly, underneath his own cologne and the stale air of a taxi, was the cloying scent of lavender. He practically fell into my arms. "This night?" he groaned, his voice muffled in my shoulder. "You have no idea." "I'm so sorry, honey," I murmured, patting his back while my insides turned to ice. "Come on, sit down. I poured you a glass of wine." He collapsed into his chair and recounted a detailed, elaborate story about his night. The long hours, the frustrating meeting, the moment of horror when he walked out to an empty parking space. He painted a picture of himself as the victim, the hard-working man wronged by the cruel world. I nodded and listened, interjecting with sympathetic questions. "Did you see anyone suspicious in the garage? Do they have security cameras?" Each question was a shovel, and he just kept digging his hole deeper and deeper. He was a brilliant liar. I had to give him that. He was so convincing that for a fleeting, insane moment, I almost doubted myself. But then I'd catch that faint whiff of lavender, and the ice would reform in my veins. Finally, after calling the insurance company and lamenting the loss of his baby for another half hour, he declared he was emotionally and physically spent. "I need a hot shower. I need to wash this whole night off of me," he said, running a hand through his hair. He trudged up the stairs, a defeated soldier returning from a battle he didn't even know he'd already lost. The moment I heard the water start to run, I moved. His jacket was slung over the back of the sofa, his pants in a heap on the floor where he'd stepped out of them. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. A matchbook from the Starlight Inn? A phone number scribbled on a napkin? I started with the jacket. Nothing in the pockets but his keys and some loose change. Then I knelt and picked up his trousers. My fingers brushed against a piece of paper in his back pocket. It wasn't a flimsy napkin. It was a thick, crisp receipt. I pulled it out, my heart starting to pound a slow, heavy rhythm. It wasn't from a bar. It wasn't from a restaurant. It was from a high-end jewelry store in a neighboring town, a place we'd window shopped at but never bought anything from. The date was from that afternoon. My eyes scanned down the itemized list, past the SKU numbers and the sales tax. One item, a custom-ordered silver bracelet. My breath hitched. He'd never bought me a custom bracelet. Beneath the price, which was high enough to make me dizzy, was another line of text, a note from the jeweler confirming the details. It read, engraving as requested. And then I saw the words he'd chosen, the words he'd paid to have permanently etched into a piece of silver for another woman. My world tilted on its axis. The air sucked from my lungs. The engraving was just 2 words, our 2 words. Always moonbeam. Always moonbeam. The words blurred through a film of hot, silent tears. It was our secret language, a relic from our 3rd date. We were walking by the lake after a movie, and a full moon was casting a perfect, shimmering path on the water. I'd said something silly about how the moon looked like a giant spotlight just for us. He'd stopped, turned to me, and said, "You're my moonbeam, the brightest thing in the dark." From that day on, it was his name for me. In texts, in cards, whispered in my ear before we fell asleep. It was the one piece of us I thought was truly sacred, untouchable, and he had given it away. He had taken the purest, most intimate part of our story and had it engraved on a bracelet for someone else. The sound of the shower turning off upstairs snapped me back to the present. My hands shook as I folded the receipt with surgical precision along its original creases and slid it back into his pocket. I dropped the pants back onto the floor, arranging them in the exact same messy pile. I walked back into the living room, picked up my wine glass, and took a large gulp just as he came down the stairs, wrapped in a towel, rubbing his hair with another. He looked clean, cleansed. It was obscene. "Feeling better?" I asked, my voice a marvel of self-control. "A million times," he said, giving me a weary smile. "God, what a night. Thanks for this, babe." He gestured to the wine. "You always know what I need." He leaned down to kiss my forehead, and I had to fight every muscle in my body not to recoil. The smell of our soap, the soap I had bought, clung to him. He was a stranger wearing my husband's skin. The next morning was a master class in deception. I made him pancakes while he sat at the kitchen island, looking stressed and important as he spoke on the phone with the police. Then the insurance agent, recounting his fabricated tale of woe. I played my part beautifully, refilling his coffee cup, murmuring sympathetic phrases, even offering to drive him to the office and pick him up until this whole car situation was sorted. "You're the best, you know that," he said, grabbing my hand across the island. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I just smiled, a dead, hollow thing, while his words echoed in the vast emptiness that had opened up inside my chest. He didn't know what he'd do without me? I was about to find out what he'd do without his precious car, for starters. He took an Uber to work, and the moment the car turned the corner, my performance ended. The house was quiet, but my mind was screaming. The bracelet, the lavender, room 13. It wasn't just about a physical act anymore. Giving her my name, our name, was an erasure. He was trying to replace me piece by piece. But first, I needed to know who she was. I needed to see the face of the woman who was living a second secret life with my husband. I went back to the source. The phone bill. That unrecognized number that had started it all. I sat down at my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. In the old days, I would have had to hire a private investigator. But this is the modern age, and betrayal is a digital footprint. I typed the number into a reverse phone lookup site I'd seen advertised on a true crime podcast, paid the $15 fee without a second thought, and waited. The progress bar spun for what felt like an eternity. And then a name popped onto the screen. Chloe Vance. Chloe. The name was so simple, so innocuous. I typed it into the search bar of every social media platform I could think of. Her profiles were mostly private, but one was wide open, a public Instagram account. My heart hammered as I clicked the link. Her profile picture was a sunny, smiling selfie. She was pretty, I guess, in a generic sort of way. Younger than me, maybe by 5 years. Long, blonde hair, big blue eyes, a perfect white smile. She looked like the kind of woman who uses lavender-scented everything. I started scrolling, an obsessive archaeologist digging through the ruins of my own life. There were pictures of her with friends at brunch, clinking mimosa glasses, pictures of her on a beach, her body tanned and toned, pictures of her dog, a fluffy golden retriever. It was all so normal, so nauseatingly cheerful. There were no pictures of Mark, of course. They were too smart for that. I kept scrolling, going back months. I was looking for a clue, a crack in her perfect facade. Then I saw it. A picture posted just 2 days ago. It was a close-up shot of her wrist. Draped delicately across it was a new gleaming silver bracelet. My breath caught in my throat. I zoomed in. I could just make out the tiny looping script of the engraving, but I didn't need to read it. I knew what it said. The caption underneath the photo was simple. Some new sparkle. He knows me so well. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me. He knows her so well. He knew me. I almost threw the laptop across the room, but I forced myself to look, to take in every detail. Her manicure was perfect. Her skin was flawless. And then my eyes drifted to the background of the photo. It was slightly out of focus, but it was there. She was sitting at a table, a dark wood table. And spread out on the table behind her wrist, unmistakable even in their blurred state, were our kitchen renovation blueprints, the farmhouse sink, the marble island. She wasn't just in a motel room with my husband. She had been in my dining room. She had been in my house, touching the plans for the future he and I were supposed to build together. The air in my lungs turned to poison. She had been in my house, my safe space. The thought was a violation far more profound than the motel room. How many times? When? Had she sat on my sofa, used my bathroom, touched the little stick figure drawing on the mirror? The blueprints weren't just plans. They were a symbol of our shared dream, a tangible map of the life we were creating. And he had laid them out for her, letting her gaze fall upon the sacred lines of our future. My future. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was auditioning my replacement. My mind, which had been a storm of chaotic emotion, suddenly became still and clear. The rage and the grief coalesced into a single point of icy resolve. This was no longer just about exposing him. This was about dismantling him. He had brought the war into my home, and I was going to burn his kingdom to the ground. But not with fire and screaming. That was her style, all sparkle and emojis. My style would be quieter, colder, and far more devastating. I spent the rest of the day in a flurry of controlled, deliberate action. First, I called the towing company. "City Towing, you call we haul." The same gruff voice. I explained in a calm, slightly frantic tone that my husband's stolen car had been miraculously recovered. A mix-up, a prank, who knows? The point was, we had it back. Then I asked the important question. Where is the impound lot? I need to know where to tell the insurance company not to look for it. The man on the phone, probably used to all sorts of strange requests, gave me the address without a second thought. It was on the other side of the county, a bleak industrial park. Perfect. Next, I went into our shared home office. We had a joint savings account, the one we so diligently contributed to every month for our renovation. The kitchen fund, we called it. Our dream account. I logged into the online banking portal, my hands steady. The balance was just over $32,000. I stared at the number, a monument to 5 years of skipped vacations, packed lunches, and disciplined saving. With a few clicks, I transferred every single cent into my personal savings account, the one he didn't even know I had. Then I closed the joint account permanently. An email confirmation popped into my inbox a moment later. Account closed. Dream demolished. Then came the credit cards. He had an Amex Platinum with a ridiculously high limit, his pride and joy. I was listed as an authorized user. I logged into the account, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. I reported his card as lost, not stolen, just lost. A small but crucial difference. It meant the account wouldn't be frozen in a flurry of fraud alerts. It would simply be deactivated, and a new card would be mailed to the primary address. To me. I did the same for our shared Visa and the department store card we used for household purchases. In the space of 10 minutes, I had financially neutered him. He was walking around the city with a wallet full of useless plastic. My final act for the day was the most satisfying. I remembered Mark complaining a few months ago about Janet in accounting, the supposed source of the lavender smell. He'd said she was disorganized, always losing things, and that he'd had to help her set up a cloud backup for all her important files. He'd even shown me how he'd linked her work drive to his personal one, just temporarily, to help her transfer everything. He was so proud of his tech savviness, his willingness to help a colleague. I had a strong suspicion he had never unlinked those drives. I found the folder on our home computer easily. It was labeled Janet Backup. I clicked it open. It wasn't full of spreadsheets and accounting reports. It was full of photos, hundreds of them, selfies of Mark and Chloe, their faces pressed together, pictures of them at a winery, a place I'd been begging Mark to take me for our anniversary, pictures of them in what was clearly her apartment, cooking dinner together, and then the one that made me stop breathing. A photo of Chloe wearing nothing but one of Mark's work shirts, my shirt. I had ironed that shirt standing in our kitchen, holding a mug from my favorite set, smiling at the camera as if she owned the place. The timestamp was from a Tuesday morning 3 weeks ago, a day I had been at a conference an hour away. He had brought her into our bed. I methodically downloaded every single photo, every piece of damning evidence, onto a new encrypted flash drive. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but it was my ammunition. It was the truth, and the truth was a weapon. That evening, Mark came home, full of sighs and complaints about the nightmare of trying to get a rental car on such short notice. He grumbled about the insurance company giving him the runaround. I listened, I sympathized, I made his favorite dinner. We sat and ate. The silence between us filled with everything I knew and everything he was hiding. He had no idea he was a dead man walking. The next day was Saturday. He announced he needed to go to the office for a few hours, just to catch up on what I missed yesterday with all that car drama, he said, kissing me goodbye. I knew where he was going. He was going to see Chloe. Probably to complain about his terrible luck and let her comfort him. Probably to give her that bracelet in person. I waited 20 minutes and then I checked his location. Not the office. It was a brunch spot downtown, the same one from her Instagram pictures. I didn't follow him. I had a better idea. I got in my car and drove to the address Chloe Vance's reverse phone lookup had provided. It was a trendy new apartment complex about 15 minutes away. I parked across the street and just watched. An hour later, an Uber pulled up. Mark got out, followed by Chloe. She was laughing, her head thrown back. He had his arm around her waist. She was wearing the bracelet. He kissed her, a long, lingering kiss right on the sidewalk for the whole world to see. Then he got back in the Uber and she went inside. I waited until the Uber was gone. Then I pulled out my phone. I had one more call to make. I dialed the number for the apartment building's management office, the one listed on the big sign out front. A cheerful voice answered, "Leasing office, this is Brenda." "Hi, Brenda," I said, my voice sweet as honey. "I'm calling about an urgent pest problem in apartment 4B. That's Chloe Vance's unit." "Oh, we haven't had any reports. What kind of pest is it?" Brenda asked, concerned. I took a slow, steadying breath, looking at Chloe's fourth-floor window. "Bedbugs," I said, the word dripping with disgust. "A really, really bad infestation." Brenda's cheerful demeanor immediately vanished, replaced by a tone of controlled panic. "Bedbugs? In 4B? Are you sure?" I could hear the frantic clicking of a keyboard in the background. "Oh, I'm sure," I said, layering my voice with a convincing shudder. "My sister is a friend of Chloe's. She was just there last night for a girls' night. She came home covered in bites. She's mortified. Chloe was apparently too embarrassed to report it herself, so my sister begged me to make an anonymous call. She said the infestation is so bad they're probably already spreading to the neighboring units. That was the magic phrase. Spreading to neighboring units. To a building manager, those words are the equivalent of a lit stick of dynamite. I could practically hear Brenda's blood pressure skyrocket. She assured me they would be taking immediate and aggressive action and thanked me for the tip-off. I hung up the phone with a grim smile. The full-scale pest control protocol for bedbugs is not a subtle affair. It involves sealing off apartments, bagging every single piece of fabric, and pumping the place full of industrial-grade chemicals. Chloe Vance was about to have a very, very bad week. When Mark got home that evening, he was in a surprisingly good mood. I guess his brunch had been a success. He was talking about a new project at work, spinning a web of lies so intricate and detailed it was almost artistic. I just nodded along, a placid smile on my face, the perfect supportive wife. Inside, I was a coiled spring. The final pieces were in place. It was time. The next morning, Sunday, I woke up before him. I made the coffee just like always. I sat at our kitchen table, my laptop open, and waited. Around 8, his phone, which he'd left charging on the counter, began to buzz incessantly. A string of frantic texts. I didn't have to read them. I knew who they were from. A moment later, he stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "What is all that racket?" he mumbled. "Sounds like you're popular this morning," I said sweetly, sipping my coffee. He picked up his phone, his brow furrowing as he read the screen. His face went from sleepy to confused to utterly horrified in the span of about 10 seconds. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Chloe, her apartment. There was an emergency fumigation. She has to throw out her mattress, all her clothes, everything." I feigned a look of shock. "Chloe? Your colleague? The one you helped with the computer thing?" I asked, my voice dripping with faux innocence. "That's horrible. What happened?" "Bedbugs," he said, looking pale. "A massive infestation. They're evacuating half the floor." "Oh, that's just awful," I said, taking another calm sip of coffee. "Well, I guess it's a good thing you weren't over there." His eyes snapped to mine. A flicker of panic. "What? Why would I be over there?" "No reason," I said, shrugging. "It's just, such a terrible thing to happen." I let the silence hang in the air for a moment before delivering the next blow. "Speaking of terrible things, I tried to use the Amex card to order groceries yesterday and it was declined. So was the Visa. Did you get a fraud alert or something?" He looked completely bewildered, his mind clearly still reeling from Chloe's textile apocalypse. "Declined? No, that can't be right. Let me check." He fumbled with his phone, tapping into his banking app. I watched as the color drained from his face. He toggled between screens, his thumb moving frantically. "What the hell? They're all inactive. And the kitchen fund, it's empty. Where's the money?" "I closed the account," I said simply. I stood up and walked over to the counter, retrieving a single flash drive. "All our joint assets have been moved. Consider it my half of the severance package." He stared at me, his mouth hanging open. The confident, brilliant liar was gone. In his place was a confused little boy who had been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "What are you talking about? Severance package? Are you insane?" "No, Mark, I'm just done," I said, my voice level and cold. "I'm done with the late nights at the office. I'm done with the smell of lavender. I'm done with you giving our future, our plans, our private jokes to some girl you met 6 months ago." I tossed the flash drive onto the table. It landed with a small, definitive click. "That's a backup of your Janet folder, or should I say the Chloe folder. There are some really lovely shots in there. The one of her in our kitchen, wearing my shirt, is particularly artistic. I'm sure your boss, Mr. Henderson, would love to see them. Not to mention his wife, who I believe is on the board of that family values charity. And of course, there's Chloe's ex-fiancé. I found him on Facebook. He seemed like a nice guy. I bet he'd be very interested to know why their engagement really ended." Every word was a nail in his coffin. He looked from the flash drive to my face, his expression a mixture of terror and disbelief. He was finally seeing me, not the doting, oblivious wife, but the woman who had systematically and silently dismantled his entire life in under 48 hours. "And your car," I added, unable to resist the final twist of the knife. "It wasn't stolen. I had it towed from the Starlight Inn while you were in room 13. It's sitting in an impound lot on the other side of the county. I have the release slip, but after paying for Chloe's new bed and all her new clothes and first and last on a new apartment, I doubt you'll have the cash to get it out any time soon." He finally found his voice, a pathetic, strangled whisper. "You did this? All of this?" "You started it," I corrected him. "You brought her into our home. You had our name, my name, engraved on a bracelet for her. You thought I was stupid. You thought I was just the wife, the background character in your exciting new life. You were wrong." I picked up my purse and my car keys from the counter. I didn't have a bag packed. I didn't need one. Everything I owned in this house felt tainted now. I could buy new things. I walked to the door, my steps feeling lighter than they had in months. He didn't move. He just stood there, a statue in the ruins of the life he had torched with his own 2 hands. I paused at the door and looked back at him one last time. "By the way, Mark," I said, my voice clear and bright, "the blueprints are in the recycling bin. I've decided I want a different kind of kitchen." And then I walked out into the sunshine, leaving him alone in the perfect quiet house with nothing but his useless credit cards, a folder full of secrets, and the faint lingering smell of my coffee.